Okay, let's just dive right in. Think about this scenario. Someone, a mother, drops her kids at school, heads home, and then just disappears completely.
Vanishes.
Yeah,
And there's no body, maybe no obvious forced entry at first glance.
right. But the police, they pretty quickly call it a murder. So how do you even start to build a case to seek justice when you're missing that central piece?
Yeah, that's a massive hurdle right from the start, isn't it?
Yeah.
It completely changes the game for investigators and prosecutors. They have to lean really heavily on, other kinds of evidence.
Like circumstantial stuff.
Exactly. Circumstantial evidence, forensic traces, tracking movements, figuring out motivations, all without the victim's body to provide answers. It's a different kind of investigation.
And that exact kind of complex puzzle is what we're tackling today in this deep dive. We're looking at the disappearance of Jennifer Dulos. She vanished from her home in New Canaan, Connecticut back in May 2019.
It's a really tragic story. We've gathered quite a bit of materials for this, articles, research notes, summaries of the investigation, trying to cover all the bases.
Yeah, we've got a good stack here, and our goal really is to walk you through it all. We want to pull out the key information so you can get a clear picture of the timeline, who the main people involved were, what evidence actually surfaced, and, where things stand legally now.
Basically, unpack this whole complex situation for you.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's Friday, May 24th, 2019, New Canaan, Connecticut. Seems like a normal morning. Jennifer takes her 5 kids to school. That's around 8 a.m.
And we know she got home. This is crucial. A neighbor's security camera actually caught her car pulling back into her driveway.
What time was that?
Just about 8:05 a.m. So a very clear point where she's known to be back at the house.
Okay, 8:05. And based on everything the police found later, they believe the attack and whatever initial cleanup happened occurred in a pretty specific window after that.
Right. They narrowed it down to between roughly 8:05 a.m. and 10:05 a.m. that same morning.
That's not a very long time.
No, it suggests something quite sudden, possibly planned, rather than something escalating over hours.
And then, later that morning, the first real sign that something was seriously wrong emerges.
Yes, the nanny, Lauren Almeida. She arrived at 11:30 a.m., and she noticed something odd right away. Jennifer's Range Rover was still in the garage.
Which was weird
Because Jennifer was supposed to use that car for appointments she had scheduled that day. But instead, it was the other car, the Chevrolet Suburban, that was missing.
Okay. And those appointments?
She missed them. She had meetings planned in New York City for 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. When she didn't turn up, didn't answer calls. Well, that's when friends and the nanny started getting really worried.
Understandably. So the concern builds through the afternoon.
It does. And by that evening, between 7 and 7:30 p.m., Jennifer was officially reported missing. That triggered a silver alert.
Which is like a public notification for missing people, especially vulnerable ones.
Exactly. And that's when the police really started examining the house itself.
And what they found, that changed everything, didn't it?
Immediately, they found significant evidence of violence. Blood. Stains and spatter in the garage on the floor, a door, a wall. Even on the outside of that Range Rover still parked there.
Not just the garage, though.
No, they found blood in the kitchen, too.
Wow. So seeing that, the focus must have shifted instantly.
Absolutely. That discovery, the amount of blood and where it was found, it told police this wasn't just someone who had wandered off. This was a crime scene. A violent crime had happened inside that house. The missing person case became a criminal investigation right then and there.
That forensic evidence really setting the tone from the get-go.
It was pivotal. Allowed them to secure the scene and approach it differently. That quick assessment was vital.
Now, to even start to understand the why behind this, you really need to look at the background context, specifically the relationship between Jennifer and her estranged husband, Fotis Dulos.
Yeah, the backstory is intense. They'd been married for 13 years, but Jennifer filed for divorce back in June 2017.
And they had 5 kids together.
5 children, yes, including 2 sets of twins. They were between 8 and 13 years old when their mom disappeared.
And the split itself, it wasn't gradual.
Not at all. Jennifer took the children and left their home in Farmington quite suddenly. She moved to New Canaan and filed for divorce the very next day.
Wow. And the legal battle that followed. The sources we looked at used some strong words.
Oh, yeah. Contentious, prolonged, a long custody battle. It sounds like it was incredibly acrimonious. Both sides were filing motion after motion, accusing each other of all sorts of things, disparagement.
That kind of conflict happens in divorces, unfortunately, but something stands out here.
Jennifer's fear. It's documented. In court filings, she actually wrote that she was afraid Fotis would harm me in some way because she was seeking the divorce. She mentioned his controlling behavior, specific threats. It's chilling to read that now.
Especially given what happened. What was the custody situation?
Initially, they had temporary joint custody. Things escalated. In early 2018, a court found Fotis had violated some orders, and then came a really critical decision in March 2018.
What was that?
The court gave Jennifer sole physical custody of the children.
Sole custody, why?
The judge cited an immediate and present risk of psychological harm and even potential physical danger to the kids if they had unsupervised contact with Fotis.
That's a very strong finding.
Extremely strong. He was initially only granted supervised visits. Our sources call that ruling a substantial blow to Fotis. The terms were apparently modified later, but the initial finding of risk was a huge deal. It validated Jennifer's concerns in a big way.
And there were other issues simmering too, right? It wasn't just the custody fight.
No. Fotis had started an affair with a woman named Michelle Troconis about a year before Jennifer even filed for divorce. And Troconis moved into the Farmington house with Fotis after Jennifer and the kids left.
So infidelity was a factor.
Definitely. Plus major financial disagreements tied up with the divorce and Fotis's luxury home building business. And Jennifer had also documented what she described as emotional abuse during the marriage.
So when you put all that together, the custody battle, the court saying he was a risk, Jennifer's own expressed fear, the affair, the money issues, the alleged emotional abuse.
The sources really connect those dots. They point to a motive rooted in control or maybe the loss of it. The term uxoricide, the killing of a wife, comes up, often linked to perpetrators wanting to eliminate an obstacle or regain dominance.
It suggests the motive wasn't simple, but a culmination of all these pressures.
Exactly, like the divorce and custody battle were the main flashpoint, maybe threatening his control over the kids, the finances, everything.
Okay, let's shift back to the investigation itself. After they found the blood evidence at the house, what were the next steps? The missing Suburban was key, right?
Absolutely critical. Remember, Jennifer's Range Rover was home, but her Chevy Suburban was gone.
And they found footage of it leaving.
Yes. Surveillance video captured the Suburban driving away from Jennifer's house at 10:25 a.m. That's the end of that crucial window we talked about.
And who was driving?
Police identified Fotis Dulos as the driver.
Wow. Okay, so that immediately points to him potentially.
Transporting Jennifer's body, yes.
Or
And maybe items used in the attack or the cleanup, it became a huge focus.
And then there was that trip later in the day.
The Hartford trip. This was later that evening, around 7:30, 7:45 p.m. Surveillance cameras again. This time, they caught Fotis Dulos and Michelle Troconis together.
Doing what?
Driving along Albany Avenue in Hartford, stopping repeatedly. They were seen discarding garbage bags into more than 30 different trash bins along that street.
30 bins. That sounds deliberate, like trying to scatter evidence.
Exactly. It suggests a very conscious effort to make it extremely difficult for police to recover anything significant. A sophisticated attempt to hinder the investigation.
And Jennifer's Suburban, where did they find that?
It was found abandoned later on near Waveney Park in New Canaan. That's over 3 miles from her house.
Meanwhile, back at Jennifer's home, the forensic teams were still working.
Yes, and the lab results started coming in. They confirmed that most of the blood found belonged to Jennifer. But they also found something else.
What was that?
A mixture of Jennifer's and Fotis's DNA on the faucet in the kitchen.
His DNA at the scene, that's big.
Very big. It placed him inside the house, and police also noted that the scene looked like someone had tried to clean it up.
But the biggest evidence probably came from those trash bags in Hartford.
Definitely. Investigators managed to recover some of those bags before they were collected, and the contents were chilling.
What did they find?
Bloodied clothing, a bra, shirts, even a rain poncho later identified as likely Jennifer's. Cleaning supplies, like sponges with blood on them, zip ties, black gloves, a razor, a white bath towel, also bloodied.
And any DNA linking back to Fotis or Michelle?
Yes. Fotis's DNA was found inside one of the recovered gloves and on another item from those bags as well.
Inside a glove. That's very specific.
Highly incriminating. They also found altered license plates mixed in with the trash.
Altered plates. Wow. That really suggests pre-planning, doesn't it? Trying to disguise a vehicle, perhaps.
It certainly points that way. And tracking all these movements, the car, the disposal trip, technology played a huge role.
How so?
Things like BriefCam video analytics. It's software that helps police sift through massive amounts of surveillance footage much faster. It was crucial for tracking Fotis's truck and confirming he was with Troconis in Hartford.
And cell phone data.
That too. It put Fotis's phone right on Albany Avenue during the time they were seen dumping the bags. Meanwhile, Jennifer's phone, her credit cards, absolutely no activity after May 24th. Radio silence.
So, evidence is mounting against Fotis, placing him at the scene, driving her car, dumping potential evidence. What about the search for Jennifer herself?
The search efforts were enormous, described as intensive. Helicopters, canine units, dive teams searching ponds and reservoirs. They scoured properties linked to Fotis in Farmington, including revisiting one in 2021 with ground-penetrating radar. They searched parks, woods, areas near his home in Fairfield County.
Just a massive undertaking.
Huge. And one particular location became very significant later in the investigation. A property owned by a man named Kent Mawhinney.
Who was he?
He was a friend of Fotis's and also his former lawyer. On a secluded property Mawhinney owned back in August 2019, investigators discovered something disturbing.
What was it?
A shallow grave. It looked like it had been dug and then partially filled back in. It contained lime and a blue tarp.
Lime, like to decompose a body.
That's often the suspicion when lime is found in such a context. Jennifer's body wasn't there, and sources said it looked like some items might have been removed from the site. But finding a prepared grave like that?
Points towards premeditation, and maybe others being involved.
Exactly. It strongly suggested pre-planning and raised questions about who knew about it or helped prepare it.
So this brings us to the main suspects investigators focused on. There were 3 key people, right?
That's right. The investigation ultimately centered on Fotis Dulos, his girlfriend Michelle Troconis, and his friend and former lawyer, Kent Mawhinney.
Let's take Fotis first. As Jennifer's estranged husband, he was obviously the prime suspect from early on.
Yeah, the sources consistently paint him as the primary perpetrator. The theory police developed was that he was waiting for Jennifer at her home that morning, possibly having ridden a bicycle there, as some bike tire tracks were noted nearby, attacked her when she returned, used her own Suburban to transport her body and the cleanup items, and then later disposed of the evidence with Troconis.
And the evidence linking him directly.
Being identified driving the Suburban away from her house. His DNA mixed with Jennifer's on that kitchen faucet, and crucially, his DNA inside the glove and on another item found in those discarded trash bags.
He was arrested fairly quickly, wasn't he? But not initially for murder?
Correct. His first arrest was in June 2019, along with Troconis, for tampering with evidence and hindering prosecution related to the disposal actions. He was arrested again on a similar charge in September 2019.
But then the charges got much more serious.
Yes. In January 2020, based on the accumulating evidence, the charges were escalated significantly. He was charged with capital murder, and kidnapping.
How did he plead?
He pleaded not guilty to all charges.
Yeah.
But he never faced trial.
Right. He died by suicide later that same month, January 2020.
Yes. He maintained his innocence right up until his death. His suicide meant there was no public trial for the main suspect, no chance for him to testify or potentially confess. It left a major gap in the legal resolution of the case.
Okay, then there's Michelle Troconis, Fotis's girlfriend at the time. What was her alleged role?
She was seen as an accomplice, primarily in the cover-up and conspiracy after the presumed murder occurred.
Her main alleged action was being with Fotis during that evidence disposal trip in Hartford.
That was the most visible part, caught on camera. But sources also suggest she was involved in a conspiracy with Fotis and possibly Mawhinney. Her name also came up in connection with attempts Fotis made to create an alibi for himself for the time Jennifer disappeared.
And she faced similar charges initially.
Yes. Arrested alongside Fotis in June 2019 for tampering and hindering, rearrested in September 2019. And then, like Fotis, her charges were upgraded in January 2020 to include conspiracy to commit murder.
But unlike Fotis, she went to trial.
She did. She pleaded not guilty. Her trial started in January 2024 and got a lot of media attention.
And the outcome?
On March 1st, 2024, the jury found her guilty on all 6 counts she faced. Conspiracy to commit murder, 4 counts of tampering with physical evidence, and 1 count of hindering prosecution in the 2nd degree.
Guilty on all counts. What was her sentence?
In May 2024, she was sentenced to 14.5 years in prison. Though one of the tampering counts was later vacated, she has continued to deny involvement.
Her conviction is pretty significant, isn't it? Especially with no body found and Fotis deceased.
Hugely significant. It really shows the power of a strong circumstantial case built on forensic evidence, surveillance, and testimony. It highlights that even without the victim's body, you can secure a murder conspiracy conviction. And it sends a message about accountability for accomplices in covering up serious crimes.
Okay, the third person implicated was Kent Mawhinney, Fotis's friend, former lawyer.
Right. His alleged involvement was also in the conspiracy to commit murder. Sources suggest he conspired with Fotis and Troconis.
How is he linked? Besides the gravesite on his property.
Well, his name also came up in relation to alibis, and his statements to police were reportedly inconsistent. He apparently denied certain contacts with Fotis on the day Jennifer disappeared or during the evidence disposal time. But phone records contradicted him, showing they had been in touch.
And there was that disturbing background with his own estranged wife.
Yes, she had previously accused him of very serious things, like spousal rape and threats against her life. That context, combined with the discovery of the prepared gravesite on his property, its location, the lime, the tarp, the signs of disturbance, all pointed investigators towards his potential complicity or pre-planning.
So he was arrested too.
Yes, also in January 2020, he was charged with conspiracy to commit murder.
And his status?
He's pleaded not guilty. As far as our sources indicate, he's still awaiting trial. No date seems to be scheduled yet, so his alleged role and the full extent of the conspiracy, that's still an open legal chapter.
It really sounds like a potential multi-person conspiracy then.
The charges certainly suggest that.
Okay, let's revisit the motive. We touched on the divorce and custody battle, but the sources seem to dig deeper than just saying it was about the divorce ending.
Yeah, they really emphasize that the primary driver seems to be Fotis wanting to end the divorce and child custody proceedings that were not going his way.
That 2-year fight described as incredibly bitter.
Exceptionally bitter. And Jennifer's own documented fears about him harming her really underscore the stakes she felt were involved.
And that court ruling giving her sole custody, citing risk, that's framed as a major catalyst.
A significant blow is how the sources put it. It represented a major loss of control for Fotis regarding his children and potentially fueled a sense of desperation.
On top of the custody issue, you had the affair with Troconis still ongoing.
Right, the infidelity. Plus, the huge financial implications the divorce could have had, especially for his business. And Jennifer's past documentation of his controlling behavior and threats, it all weaves together.
So the interpretation is less about just ending a marriage and more about power, control.
That seems to be the core idea presented, that the presumed murder was a kind of final, desperate act to regain control or maybe retaliate for the loss of it. Uxoricide cases, the killing of a wife, are often linked to these dynamics perpetrators who can't handle losing control over their partner or their family situation.
So it wasn't just one thing, but a culmination. Loss of control over the kids, assets, maybe his public image, all possibly amplified by the court rulings going against him.
That appears to be the picture the sources paint. And they use this case as a really stark warning about how domestic conflict can escalate dangerously when issues of power and control are central.
Let's talk about the legal outcomes and the big questions that remain. We saw the charges escalate over time as more evidence came to light.
From those initial tampering charges in June 2019 to the rearrests and then the major escalation to murder and conspiracy charges in January 2020.
Fotis' suicide obviously had a huge impact on the legal process.
A massive impediment to full judicial closure, really. No public trial for the person believed to be the main perpetrator, no direct testimony from him. It leaves questions unanswered and denies Jennifer's family that specific form of resolution regarding his actions.
But Michelle Troconis' trial did happen, and her conviction on all counts, including conspiracy to commit murder. It's a very concrete outcome.
Absolutely. It strongly validates the investigation and the power of the evidence they gathered, even without Jennifer's body. It shows that accomplices can be held accountable, which is a significant legal precedent, especially in these difficult no-body cases.
And Kent Mawhinney's case is still pending. His trial for conspiracy could potentially reveal more about the planning or events surrounding Jennifer's disappearance.
That remains an open legal question, yes.
There was also a legal development regarding Jennifer herself, wasn't there?
Yes. She was officially declared legally dead on October 24th, 2023. There had been an earlier attempt, but it was denied based on the standard 7-year waiting period for missing persons. This expedited declaration in 2023 was granted partly to allow her estate to pass to her children who needed that support.
And the most painful, lingering aspect of this whole case, Jennifer's body has never been found.
Never. Despite all those extensive searches, it's just an unimaginable ongoing trauma for her family and friends. Legal convictions bring a measure of accountability, but the inability to lay Jennifer to rest, to have that final closure, it's profound.
There was a quote from the family, wasn't there?
Yes, a statement saying, "We hold fast in our belief that Jennifer's body will be found." It just speaks volumes about their enduring pain and hope.
And the children, they were so young, 8 to 13. Now they're growing into young adults without their mother and with their father implicated in her death before taking his own life. Raised by their grandmother and the nanny, Lauren Almeida.
It's just devastating for them. Those who knew Jennifer remember her qualities, her warmth, her intelligence, her strength.
And her family and friends have tried to create something positive out of this horror.
They have. They've been very active in encouraging support for domestic violence organizations. They explicitly connect Jennifer's tragedy to this wider issue, trying to raise awareness about coercive control and the hidden dangers that can exist even in relationships that look normal from the outside.
It really serves as a powerful, if tragic, reminder.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The domestic violence isn't confined to any particular socioeconomic group, and the dynamics of control can be incredibly dangerous.
So to wrap up this deep dive, we've walked through the timeline of Jennifer Dulos' disappearance, looked at the key people involved, detailed the crucial evidence, especially the forensic and digital evidence that built the case without a body, and examined the complex motives and the legal outcomes so far.
It's a case that really showcases, I think, the determination of investigators using every tool available in incredibly challenging circumstances.
But fundamentally, it remains a stark and heartbreaking story about the devastating impact of domestic violence, not just on the direct victim, but on children, families, and entire communities.
And perhaps a final thought to leave you with. Consider how the fact that Jennifer Dulos' body is still missing continues to shape everything about this case. How does that absence affect her family's search for peace? How does it influence the ongoing narrative of the crime, and perhaps even any future legal proceedings or investigations? It's a question that underscores the deep, unresolved wound at the heart of this tragedy.